Welcome to our posts. Today we will see stories of our entitled parents. Parents decided to cancel my 14th birthday party to accommodate my spoiled younger brother. Reinstated it when I told everyone at school. I'm 20 male, and his happened when I was 14. I have a brother that's about 6 years younger than me. And he was extra coddled by my parents for having been diagnosed with high-functioning autism when he was 4. But other than that, he seems very normal, just unbelievably spoiled. And he used that to get his way a lot. And by a lot, I mean nearly all the time. Anything I had, he also had to have. So that meant we had doubles of almost everything that wasn't shared items. And anything he had that I didn't, he'd rub in my face any way he could. When I was 11, I begged my parents for a 3DS for my 12th birthday. I got one, but then was told to lend it to my brother whenever he wanted it, or else I'd have it taken away. Which it was, a lot. When my aunt found out after seeing my parents forcibly take my 3DS out of my hands to give to my brother on one of her visits, she let loose on them for such blatant favoritism. They returned my 3DS immediately, then blamed me for the situation after my aunt left. But they didn't make me give it to my brother again. Instead, my parents went out a few days later and bought another 3DS as a surprise gift for my brother. On several of mine and other people's birthdays, my brother made a huge fuss because the party wasn't all about him. Even going so far as to outright state that he was upset because he wasn't getting any gifts or getting to blow out the candles on the cake. My parents learned the hard way that they couldn't enable my brother the way they'd have liked at those parties. And were actually kicked out of a few for trying. And because of that, other kids at his school stopped inviting him to birthday parties altogether. For me, my birthdays were some of the only days I had that I got to have about me, because otherwise my parents forced my life to revolve around my little brother. And the year prior to when this story took place, my parents ended up paying more attention to him the entire time of my 13th birthday. And even asked me if I'd let my brother blow out my candles for me because he was upset and pouting. I refused that because I wanted to blow out my own candles. They called me a spoiled brat at first, till my aunt intervened and chastised them on their favoritism yet again. And stated how much she had noticed how my brother gets nearly everything between the two of us just because he's autistic. My parents got no support from anyone else there other than my brother, who was still crying because he wasn't getting to blow out my candles. And because he didn't get his way, he tried to outright spit on my cake out of spite. But my awesome aunt thankfully blocked him before he got the chance. Then scolded him till he ran to my mom in tears. My parents took a lot of heat from the other adults there, and then promised to never ask me to let my brother blow out my candles again. But they pretty much just went through the motions for rest of the party. My aunt pretty much took over coordinating everything from that point. The following year, a couple of weeks before my birthday, my parents sat me down and told me they were still gonna get me some gifts and a small cake, but my birthday party was effectively cancelled to avoid my brother having another meltdown. I told them I couldn't believe they were doing this to me, and they just seemed to shrug it off without a care. So at school over the next week, I told my friends, my teachers, and even my school counselor. All of them were appalled by my parents' lack of consideration or empathy. The vice principal even found out and consoled me. And all of this got back to my parents through social media. My parents ended up grounding and gaslighting me for telling so many people. But that didn't stop me from still telling everyone at school that I was grounded for just being upset my birthday was cancelled for no good reason. I guess that made it a lot worse because several of my parents' own friends, along with parents to other kids in my school, called them up or sent them FB messages basically saying, "What the hell is wrong with you?" And suddenly I was ungrounded. I didn't get an apology either. My dad just walked into my room with his arms crossed, told me my grounding was over early, and then walked out. That was it. I thought my party was still cancelled because nobody said anything about it. And my brother thought it hilarious and rubbed it in my face that I wasn't going to get to celebrate. But by the end of the 2 weeks, my parents held a surprise party for me at my favorite restaurant. And then started claiming that was their intent all along. I knew it wasn't. From what I'd seen, everyone was incredibly unhappy with them for what they did. And it showed with any interactions family members had with my parents. So they ended up doing the surprise party to try and save what little of their reputations they had left. But I'm pretty sure they had to pay through the nose that day to just accommodate me. I got dinner with all my friends at my favorite restaurant that had a small arcade. And even got the PS4 game system I'd been jonesing for at the time. I could tell it was all pretty much planned and bought last minute, because my dad had a look about him that my aunt comically described as looking like a moth had flown out of his wallet. My brother, of course, made a huge fuss that I got that surprise party. But with so many of my friends and their parents there, my mom and dad finally put their feet down on my brother to stop his tantrum when he wanted to push my cake off the table. My brother ended up getting a time out for the first time since he was a toddler, and my mom had to stay with him to make sure he didn't do anything crazy. And he did try several times to run to the cake or stack of presents. Who knows what he would have done were it not for the fact at least one adult was always on guard. Even my dad stood guard to keep him away. My mom ended up having to remove my brother and herself from the party entirely and took my little bro to a McDonald's nearby so he could have fun in their play area. And I heard later she spent at least an hour trying to get him to come out of the playplace tube structure. And he only did so because he had to use the bathroom, then tried to run right back in again. My parents never tried to cancel my birthday again while still I lived with them. Though they never again tried as hard or spent as much. For the remaining 4 years I was under their roof, my birthday parties consisted of a local pizza parlor, a cake without even my name written on it, and never again anything as expensive as a new gaming system. I don't mean to sound spoiled. But I was a bit disappointed I never got a cake with my name on it again. My aunt called my parents out on that each year, and each year they claimed they forgot to get the cake decorated. I'm pretty sure that the reason my name was never written on another cake was because my brother always refused to eat pieces of cake that had writing of someone else's name on it at any party. And they couldn't put his name on any of my cakes, or it would have looked very bad for them. But the fact that I still got a day that was just about me at all and not my brother was still fantastic in my book. Especially because just about everything else revolved around him. During each of my remaining birthday parties while still living at home my brother made a fuss, and my mom took him somewhere else to calm him down. I was still required to share my PS4 with my brother. But it was still mine. And I took it with me when I moved out at 18. Little bro did not like that, and had a huge fit till my parents went out and bought another PS4 for him. When I moved out they finally had to deal with how they'd raised my brother so spoiled because I wasn't there to help them with him anymore. On his recent 14th birthday he went mental on our parents for not getting him a PS5. He is now currently grounded for I don't know how long after causing hundreds or maybe even thousands in collateral damage during his rampage. He picked up a chair and just started destroying anything that was in front of him with it. And my parents just looked mentally checked out when I saw them last. My aunt has also told me they confided in her that they wish they could send my brother to military or boarding school in the future because they can't handle the monster they created anymore. But there's no way they can afford that. I'd be lying if I said I didn't find it ironically funny. Next story. Parent gets pissed that his kid can't sprint up and down an airplane, threatens to kill flight attendant, flight diverted. Just finally got to my destination after this one. I was flying CLTLAX. A man and a woman boarded with 4 children aged roughly 4 to 8. First they didn't book seats together and made a stink to get people to switch seats with them to get the 6 to sit together. After an hour into the flight 2 girls started skipping and running from the middle of the plane up to the cockpit and back repeatedly. They bored of it and sat down eventually. Maybe 3 hours in a boy starts sprinting from one end of the plane to the other incessantly. Many passengers complained. A flight attendant got him to stop. That lasted 15 minutes and off to the races he goes again. Somebody else complains and he stops. Briefly. Now, a male flight attendant had enough, escorts the boy back to his seat, and forcefully tells the parents to control the kids. This is where I took my headphones off due to the yelling. The father is livid at being told to control his kids. He's screaming about having 4 kids and only 2 adults. He's screaming about the flight attendant touching his kid. He threatened to sue multiple times. Finally, the attendant yells, "Put your F mask on and sit the F down." The dude loses his S word even more and yells back, "I have your information, I will find you and I will shoot you." That's the moment I knew my night was going to suck. It took a while, but eventually all of the attendants gathered and restrained the guy. Little while later, we were told by the pilot we had to turn to Albuquerque and land. We stayed on the plane and local police escorted the guy off. Edit for clarity, whole family was removed. As I was one of few that wasn't wearing headphones, they got my info, then sent the FBI on and interviewed me. After that, we were told there was no fuel truck available to top us off, so they had to send one in. Then the maintenance guy that needed to sign off on the plane was at home and had to be called in. We eventually got going and made it to LAX about 2 hours late. I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, make sure like, comment, share and subscribe the channel or posts.